Buenas tardes a todo el mundo. Gracias por venir a pesar de la lluvia. Voy a pasar al inglés en atención a nuestro conferenciante. So thank you very much. It's such a pleasure and such an honor to welcome Diederick Croese to Sevilla. Diederick Croese is not an ambassador. Is in a way a further degree within the Singularity structure, because he is the CEO of Singularity the Netherlands. And we are so lucky that he has been willing and has had the availability to come over with his wife and his baby. So thank you so much, Diederick. Today is a great day for the chapter, because not only we have Diederick here, we have also taken part in Marbella with all this rainy day and the windy roads and so on at the Entrepreneurs Day organized by the regional government. So it definitely is a fact that the chapter is gaining momentum. So I won't be longer right now, and let's first of all listen to our co-founder, Peter Diamandis, as usual.
Welcome. By joining us here today, you are now part of the Singularity University global community. Singularity University is a B Corp, an impact organization located at the NASA Research Park in the midst of Silicon Valley. Our mission is to educate, inspire, and empower leaders and their communities across the globe to address today's grandest challenges using exponentially advancing technologies. We at Singularity University understand that we cannot do this alone. And we understand that real impact is going to happen with you and your communities at a local level. While the ideas here today represent those of Singularity University, our faculty, our founders, this entire event is the work of your Singularity University local chapter. So thank you to all of them for making today happen. We hope that you'll be inspired by today's program. Now sit back and enjoy the show.
Exactly. Sit back and enjoy the show, and no one else than Manuel Bellido, and no one better than Manuel Bellido, could do the introduction of today's speaker. Thank you so much.
Gracias. Buenas tardes a todos. Me vais a permitir que diga algo sobre el currículum de Diederick, porque es realmente extraordinario. Hay dos cosas que me llaman sobre todo la atención de este currículum de Diederick, y son dos elementos que son muy característicos del perfil de los líderes mundiales del siglo XXI. Uno es, el primero, que es cofundador de muchas organizaciones, y eso quiere decir que tiene un gran sentido de la cultura colaborativa, y que tiene también un gran sentido de la importancia del trabajo en equipo. Y otra cosa también muy importante es que aplica las nuevas tecnologías, las tecnologías exponenciales, a todos los programas y a todas las organizaciones y a todos los proyectos en los cuales interviene. Diederick estudió Derecho en la Universidad de Ámsterdam desde 1998 hasta 2004. Estuvo estudiando Derecho. Su tesis final es sobre la aplicación de las normas y las competencias de la Comunidad Económica Europea en Holanda, concretamente. En ese mismo periodo, concretamente en 2003, aprovechó de un intercambio con la Universidad de Fordham en el centro Lincoln de Manhattan, y se fue a Estados Unidos, donde hizo también un curso de formación sobre corporaciones, antimonopolio, unión monetaria y la banca. Nunca ha dejado la formación y el conocimiento, porque es siempre una persona que para él el conocimiento es fundamental, y de hecho volvió a la universidad en 2014, en la Universidad Brige, que es la Universidad Libre de Ámsterdam, que no hay que confundirla con la Universidad estatal, que da otros cursos, y allí profundizó sus estudios sobre bioética y salud. Se metió con la filosofía también. De 2005 a 2010 trabajó en la Click for Change, que es una de las firmas de abogados más prestigiosas que hay en Holanda y también a nivel internacional. Es prácticamente desde aquella época, desde 2005, ha estado trabajando como consultor. Ha asesorado a muchos inversores, a muchas grandes corporaciones para hacer transacciones, sea a nivel doméstico que a nivel transfronterizo. Prácticamente de 2010 a 2011 también lo hizo de una manera también particular y asistió a mucho asesoramiento para grandes empresas y asistió a grandes transacciones. En 2011 lo vemos como cofundador, por eso lo decía antes, y también como director del prestigioso Amsterdam Foden Institute, en la tarea de ayudar a emprendedores en el lanzamiento de empresas tecnológicas. Es un periodo en que él ayuda a muchas startups que en este momento a nivel mundial son bastante conocidas y están bastante asentadas. Prácticamente desde ese mismo año trabaja en el team de Deloitte Innovation en Utrecht, con toda la zona de influencia de Holanda, donde ayuda a muchísimas empresas también que quieren innovar, y ahí crea algunas alianzas con, por ejemplo, con TED Amsterdam o con SingularityU University. Entra en contacto también para hacer alguna alianza. En 2012 lidera TEDx Amsterdam, que como sabéis es una organización sin ánimo de lucro que trata de difundir ideas, y allí organiza muchísimos eventos y desarrolla un programa muy interesante de ideas que se llama Worth Doing, vale la pena. Y con esto le da la posibilidad de trabajar también con grandes multinacionales con las cuales coopera. En la actualidad es responsable, también cofundador, de nuevo la cultura de la colaboración, es de Deloitte Fast Venture, un nuevo servicio para descubrir proyectos interesantes a través de una nueva tecnología, de Big Data, de una plataforma muy interesante, segura para poner en contacto a distintas grandes corporaciones y sobre todo para ayudar a empresas que necesitan o que normalmente tienen un rápido crecimiento. Como ha dicho Luis antes, es CEO de Singularity University en los Países Bajos y prácticamente ha creado con un grupo de alumnos que estuvieron en la Silicon Valley, en Singularity University, ha creado un gran centro de innovación donde no solamente está ayudando a la comunidad local a través de la formación, también está tratando de trabajar para de alguna manera dar respuesta a los grandes desafíos que en este momento tiene la humanidad. Diederick está liderando cambios a través de las nuevas tecnologías. Yo estoy deseando de escucharlo porque seguramente nos va a impactar mucho este trabajo que está haciendo, así que auszubrief.
Yeah, thank you. Let me start with a video that we made for the summit. You had a summit here as well. Let's see whether it works. Thank you for being here. It's an honor to be invited. I'm here as a European. I'm not a faculty member. I'm not an expert. I'm just a citizen. But I'm invited to give an overview of what's happening. But most of this is not actually my material. I just gathered it from different sources at our summit to give you insight. Most of it is publicly available, and it's my personal combination. So our goal is the good life, in pursuit of the good life. And if this doesn't work, I will just sometimes walk by or click and then you will click. So we want a good life for many. We want to reach and impact 1 billion people, 1 billion lives positively. And you can't do that only from Mountain View. So it's better, it's more exponential if you involve all local communities, whether it's Amsterdam or Sevilla. Everyone should be involved in creating a better future. Because the definition of the good life is unknown to us all. We strive for the good life, but the Americans might perceive and define the good life different than the Chinese perhaps would define the good life. And we have evolved, of course. We are also part in the Darwinian evolution. But our evolution has been very linear, while technological evolution has grown much faster and is exponential. So we live in a world where borders have disappeared. It's a digital economy. It's a globalized economy. And change, technological change, might impact your economy, even when it arises from, for instance, Mountain View, or when it arises from Asia. If your economy is not aware of these changes, then it might be surprised. And that might result in creative destruction that gives a lot of pressure on your social system. So it's where we believe that the transition can be designed to lead to a better future, but the transition itself can be painful if our system is not coping with it. And because the future is already here, it's just unevenly distributed, it's important to make sure that a lot of people, a lot of local societies are informed as soon as possible. And there are lots of large problems at hand. And instead of looking for self-enrichment, we should rise to those higher goals. We should apply that exponential technology to solve humanity's grandest challenges. So I think this is a sizable audience, and I invite you to ask questions at any time. I mean, we can cope with that. You will recognize a lot of the UN goals, right? And these are the largest questions at hand. It's unbelievable that we believe in equality, but somehow we live in a glass house of Europe that is more transparent than ever, also through the digital change. And other people can look into our glass house and of course realize that it's unfair. If we are equal, how come that capitalism has been so good for us and perhaps not for the others? And that might lead to this video by a Dutch scientist, Frans de Waal, who has looked into animal behavior in inequality. Do you know this video? Otherwise I will not show it. Some know it, most don't. So let's show it.
Getting great, and you will see what happens. So she gives a rock to us, that's the task. And we give her a piece of cucumber and she eats it. The other one needs to give a rock to us. And that's what she does. And she gets a grape. She eats it. The other one sees that. She gives a rock to us now. Yes, again, cucumber.
So she got cucumber while the other one got a grape, right? And they both had to do the same task.
She tests the rock now against the wall. She gives it again. She gets cucumber again.
So the main point of this being, even if on moral and ethical grounds we wouldn't change our behavior, we should be aware that, of course, at one point there will be a lot of emotional unrest with people wanting what we have. And the good thing is that there are a lot of exponentially developing technologies that can be applied for the greater good. And I will just run through some of them with videos. Some of you might have seen those videos, some of you might not, and I hope it's insightful. I will not cover everything in depth because there's just no time, but let's have a go. If we could go back to the previous slide. Peter Diamandis and Ray Kurzweil. Who knows Peter Diamandis? Okay, most of you know him. Why I think he's an interesting guy is that he believes in the diversity of perspectives that can help coming up with greater solutions. So he sets out challenges, and people can build teams to solve those challenges. And it's very surprising to see that sometimes a very unexpected perspective has a great solution. For instance, when there was a BP oil spill, all the oil, of course, had to be taken off of the water surface. They decided to urgently launch a challenge, and a tattoo shop became third. And you wouldn't have surprised, of course, you would have thought that the experts in the field would come up with the best solution. But it's often not the expert. And that's also the thinking that makes, for instance, Elon Musk so interesting. He didn't start PayPal previously working in the financial sector. He didn't start Solar City with his nephew being part of the energy sector. He didn't start Tesla being part of the automotive sector, and he didn't start SpaceX being part of NASA. Ray Kurzweil is mostly known for his law of accelerating returns, and I will just go into the data. He works now at Google, developing neural networks, one of the AI teams at Google. So they decided if technology is so accelerating so much that it could impact society in a huge way, then we should apply it for a better society. But then people should also be informed. They should have the imagination and the building blocks to come up and combine those technologies to come up with great solutions. So university, personally, I think is not the best title. It's not university, but it inspires, empowers, and educates people to come up with great solutions. And the interesting thing also about Peter Diamandis is that he likes a bold thinking, the moonshots. So how could you solve problems that impact 1 billion people? Thinking 10 times bigger instead of 10% bigger. Who know of Peter Diamandis' 6 Ds? So I will very briefly run through it, but we all have a smartphone now, or most of us have a smartphone now, and what you see is that it has, for instance, a photo camera that you would otherwise have to buy. It has a calculator that you would otherwise might have bought. So it solves and dematerializes all kinds of physical objects that are now part of that great smartphone. And by doing so, it's not only dematerializing those physical objects, but it's also demonetizing that solution. And because most of the people now have a smartphone, it's also democratizing that solution. And the thing with the law of accelerating returns is that it's very deceptive in the beginning. So, for instance, additive manufacturing, so for instance 3D printing, had been out there for 30 years. And yeah, it didn't impress a lot of people in a way that companies thought, oh, this will revolutionize my business, this will disrupt me completely. In the beginning it's very disruptive, but at one point it kicks in, and then it's very hard to stop the change. So sometimes it's confused with Moore's law. I assume everyone knows what Moore's law is. It has to do with computing power and the fact that it gets smaller and cheaper and more powerful every 2 years. But it's important to realize that it only applies to the end of this graph. So this is a logarithmic plot that shows that there's an exponential curve in computer power. And that's what Ray Kurzweil saw. And he saw so a crisis in the 30s, a war in the 40s, doesn't impact that. It just goes on and on. It has to do with the compounded learning of society. We just keep on improving layer by layer by layer. And it essentially gets very interesting if it's not only in that area, but it is across all kinds of different technologies, especially when things get digitized. So nanotechnology, biotechnology, robotics, artificial intelligence, computing systems, networks. When they are converging, they enforce each other, and then greater solutions emerge from them. So 30 linear steps would get me to the back of the room, right? 30 meters. How much would I travel if I would have 30 exponential steps? A question to you. $26 times around the globe. So it's a lot. And we are not wired this way. We are wired to think linearly. We're not wired to think exponentially. We just don't grasp it. You can hear about it, but yeah. I think Ray Kurzweil really understands it. He always thinks exponentially, and I'm not sure whether sufficient people on the planet understand the effects of that. So, if I would take a very tiny white square at the top and I would do doublings, then it would look like this. So you see nothing happening, right? And then at one point you see that it starts to grow, and then it grows extremely fast. So this was 22 doublings, and in the beginning we didn't see anything pop up. If I would have taken 20 linear steps, it would have been even outside of this beamer frame, but it would be very small. And the 22 exponentials cover the entire block. At the same time, you see that the cost of starting a business has decreased a lot, right? So there are a lot of companies that are surprised that they are not coming up with the best solution. But if you think of a large organization that is trying to come up with a good solution and has only a few goes at it, then you might not realize that that large organization, there are more smart people outside that organization than inside the organization, right? And if there's a whole group of youngsters working on great solutions independently with teams, then even if the success rate of all those teams is very low, the chance of one of them to succeed and come up with a better solution than the large organization is pretty high, right? And that's the thinking behind it. And also for venture capitalists, it's interesting because if it has been so much cheaper to come up with new solutions, how can they deploy all that capital that they want to deploy? So, do you know Clayton Christensen and his S-curves? Oh. So the thinking is that everything has a life cycle. Organizations have a life cycle, but also products have a life cycle. And the thinking behind this is that you need to jump at the end of the life cycle to the next S-curve. So it would be something like this. So a company that's able to jump from one S-curve to the other will have a very long organizational life. And what you see now is that companies have a shorter life. And the fact is that they just are not keeping up with those S-curves. They are surprised by a new S-curve, and they're not developing new S-curves at time. And you see that, for instance, there are famous examples with lots of people, lots of assets, huge value that go bust. and then are replaced by a new solution that is more exponentially organized, that has less people, less assets, if any assets, and a huge value. So the question is, how do you know when to jump to the next S-curve? How do you know when it's no longer making sense to be a lawyer, to be a law firm? When will it be replaced by artificial intelligence? When do accountants realize? When does even the EUV, the lithography of ASML, be replaced by another S-curve? It might be photonics or quantum computer. So these things are, and it's shifting the playing field. So organizations are rapidly changing entire sectors. And often it's not even people from within the sector, from within the competition field. It's outside players that challenge the sector, that challenge the market. And it could feel like something like this. So it could feel, you could feel a lot of anxiety in that ride, but it could also be a huge opportunity. You could also be open, work with others, not so much focused on your identity, what you are, differentiating from another, but more thinking out of relations. How could I partner with others to develop new things together? Because if it's accelerating, if the product life cycles have so much shortened, it doesn't pay off to do 67 years of research and then market that product. It makes sense to really rapidly bring it to market and then try to keep on having a good business model with it for as long as possible. So for me, I'm not Ray Kurzweil, of course, but he has made a beautiful framework showing how technology would develop, and he is being rewarded by several US presidents for his accuracy in showing where technology will, where it will develop, and how it will develop, and how strong it will be, and even with accuracy on the years or the decades. So he's saying that his old estimate was that at 2045 all the computing power will be stronger than all human brains combined, and so AI will be stronger than human brains combined. So all kinds of technologies interact with that. But he has also made great predictions on longevity or healthy aging, etc. For me, not so much this slide, but for me, the definition in math of singularity is important. It's an undefined mathematical object. And in physics, it's a place where the forces are so large that time and space are changed, impacted. And so I always relate it to the word nestio. I don't know. So you can't look beyond a certain point, like a black hole. But we should just realize we can't predict the future. But we can see patterns. We can see patterns in, for instance, the development of technology that make certain scenarios more likely. So we should be open to those changes. And it helps for organizations to think big, to think of moonshots. Because sometimes if you don't think bold enough, then the gravity of that organization is just too large. It just pulls you back in, and you can't escape that sphere to come up with a new solution. So large thinking is important. When we think of mobility, for instance, we should not only think of cars. You could also think of drones, you could think of telecommunication, you could think of the Hyperloop or train. So I also think outside of the box. The same goes for water. Is it water desalination? Is it water cleaning? For food, you could use drones to monitor crops and see the ones that need pesticides or the ones that don't. You could, for instance, analyze food to fit with your, to make a personal nutrition. And global health has also a lot of different technologies that impact the health sector. So let's go into it. Are there any questions for now? None. Is it okay? Am I going too quick, too slow? It's okay. I will just continue. Okay. So, you know this, what I'm going to tell you, but it's interesting to see it with your own eyes. So in 97, for 55 million, there was 1.3 teraflops. And then in 2006, almost 10 years, less than 10 years later, there was 2.1 teraflops for $500. That's how quick it goes. And then, not teraflops, but megaflops, but still $5 for that kind of computing power or memory is important. So basically you could buy a Starbucks coffee for what used to be a mega computer. And it gets smaller and smaller and cheaper. And of course at one point Moore's law will end. But what comes next? So that's one of the S-curves, or several S-curves, but there will be a next one. That's what I meant with the, for instance, photonics. There will be new solutions. And I'm not an expert, but this is what I've been told. So I make a jump from top to the bottom. I'm not sure why, but energy is important. So a lot of people don't have energy. And so energy has to do with everything we do. Actually the word has to do with work. Something needs to work. And what you saw with solar is that, of course, in the beginning it was expensive. But you see how it has developed. So the price of a solar panel per watt has decreased dramatically, unbelievably so, and the investments in creating megawatts has been also equally impressive. And at one point, of course, the current solution, fossil fuels, will be impacted by this change. From my perspective, that's a good thing. It's of course not only solar, there's all kinds of renewables that add up to each other. And we will probably also still use gas and other solutions, but this is a beautiful wave, an exponential wave. And it ties into this. Who knows what this car is? Probably all of you do. It's the self-driving Google car. There are many teams working on self-driving cars, also in Eindhoven. It's not just Google. There are plenty of companies working on self-driving cars. But they make beautiful videos, so I'll show you one. And I'm not sure whether in Europe they will be equally well driven by that car. So in Amsterdam at least it might be very hard to navigate with all those bicycles and trams coming by. It will probably be that the car will be forced in a meltdown, not going anywhere because it doesn't know how to break the rules. Oh. And so we all know Elon Musk, but why is he interesting? He combines all these different elements. So solar with a car that is just that gets a digital car that gets updates for semi-self-driving on highways, and a battery, so that it gets into a system. He's a real system thinker, combining all those building blocks for new change. Why is this important to other companies? For instance, you might have noticed that Volkswagen announced that they would fire tens of thousands of people. An electric car has 90% less moving particles than the car we know, the fossil fuel car. And of course then you need less people to build that car. It will also get much cheaper. You might have read Rifkin or heard about him, but it's more about access than ownership. And these are all self-driving vehicles from TU Eindhoven. I borrowed this video from two professors that are part of our faculty. So these cars decide themselves how to interact on this crossing path. And we can learn from nature. You might have seen this Mercedes commercial, I love it. So biomimicry. So you see how the head somehow knows perfectly how to love itself. It's such a good commercial, I have to show it, right? Not making any... So, AI and robotics. Boston Dynamics was acquired by Google, for instance. All across the globe, teams are working on the most amazing robots. This is actually very impressive. See how it maneuvers through snow, rebalancing, moving forward. And you might also have seen those videos where a robot gets kicked and you're empathically even feeling that you feel sorry for the robot, right? That they are annoyed, they're irritated. And so it's interesting, and I think it ties into what we define as the human identity. Over time, what will we give rights to those robots? Do we want to make sure that they are treated well? Are we thinking differently of what we are as a human being? And this is a robot, but it also relates to prosthetics. It relates to exoskeletons. Technology will get much closer to our bodies. It might be even traveling inside of our bodies very soon. So of course this is not mainstream, but it's happening. It's on the edges, and these adjacencies, these edges will grow over time and become more and more powerful because they are on an exponential curve. Probably these robots will perform tasks that we wouldn't want to perform. So I always make the comparison to who wants to sit on the 4th floor of an insurance company working behind Excel without Windows perhaps. I wouldn't want to, right? But so if AI could be able or would be able to do that task, I would be more than willing to spend more time with my wife and child. Yeah, this is more a video that I borrowed from Hub Lipson and his team, but it shows how the robot is teaching itself like a child how to move forward. And of course, humans always play a part in writing the algorithms for robots. But I thought it was very impressive. I was surprised and impressed to see how at one point, very weirdly though, like a horror movie, the robot started to move forward. So, what I want to avoid is a dystopian view. I think technology is just a means. It will be applied for the good and it might be applied for the bad. And let's design the society in a way that mostly the good will come out of it and as little the dystopian view. But it's up to us. And we are living in a democracy, and therefore I think it's part of the reason for Singularity is to avoid that we end up in a mass democracy, that we avoid being informed very superficially and decide out of anxiety how to apply it, instead of being more in-depth informed, because each of us has a vote, so we should all be conscious of all the ethical decisions that are behind it. And if you are not so much interested in it, it will affect your future. Of course, currently it's not so good, but I mean, you might have seen robots opening doors at the DARPA challenge. It's not always doing very well. Digital manufacturing, additive manufacturing, for instance, it's not only plastics, right? It's also metal and all kinds of other. It's a whole sphere of all kinds of different solutions helping each other, making things lighter, like planes. So they use less fuel, for instance, but also in prosthetics it can be used. It can be used for fun things. And these CNC machines, so you make a digital design, then you send it to the machine, and the machine creates it. Also allows for instance, creativity to spread across the globe. So everyone could be a creator, and then could have his own creation be manufactured. So once the technology becomes digital, it moves on the exponential curve. And you, for instance, see that very well at the DNA sequencing. So the first time it was 3 billion to sequence the human genome. And halfway through the project is the myth, and it's probably true, so little had been achieved, for instance, less than 10%, that everyone thought this will go nowhere. But in the end, of course, it got solved because people thought exponentially and realized there was only so many steps away from the end result. And in 2014 it was only $1,000 to have your genome sequenced. So that's also declining very fast. And it's also the conversions that help with that. Robotics helping
You created a factory, essentially, a genomics factory.
being more effective in analyzing the human genome.
Without human intervention.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that makes you worried about your job security. But these robots are actually here to lend a hand. Welcome to Council in South San Francisco, home to one of the world's first automated DNA testing labs.
It's definitely a beautiful symphony of chaos.
Kyle Lapham customizes the robots at the heart of the operation. He says that automation is the best way to meet the growing demand for genetic testing.
So we've designed systems to very accurately and precisely move tiny bits of fluids from place to place. Our robots perform these experiments with insanely high precision.
It's also you can get your genes tested at a more reasonable price.
The more we know about our bodies, the more we can customize the treatment. In some cases, we're looking for genes that parents could pass on to their children. In other cases, it's knowing your risk factors for getting cancer. So each one of these tubes is a patient. They all now need to be sorted. The system is running 24 hours a day and not waiting for people in order to perform the next task. You're going to get a faster turnaround time.
But these machines are only as smart as their software.
You could actually create paths in space and teach the robot about the places it can and can't go.
Which means they'll still have to answer to their human overlords. For now, at least.
These robots are essentially, they're dumb.
They're also potentially dangerous.
The industrial robots that we use are powerful enough to crush metal. If someone were to be in the space, it would just keep moving right through. But we have a tremendous system of safety features surrounding them that essentially cut the power. So if I were to so much as stick my finger through there, you hear a beep. This arm just went dead.
So they've figured out how to keep employees physically safe. But what about their livelihoods?
We've continuously hired clinical laboratory scientists. By having robotics, it allows our scientists to focus on what they're trained on, which is examining complicated genetic data instead of performing manual tasks.
Just don't expect these coworkers to take you out for happy hour anytime soon.
But so what he said is complex work is definitely also where humans come in. But the more repetitive tasks can definitely be solved by robotics. And it's not only about analyzing the code of life, it's also about editing the code of life. So you currently already have CRISPR that has been applied on human cells in China, and in Europe that's not possible, right? So that's the bioethical debate that you're getting. And human enhancement, some people say, is you can't ethically not human enhance. But there's a whole debate on people that are pro and con, and I think we should all be not superficially informed, but get involved more actively.
Temos uma ideia de liga e desliga de ideias.
The positive impact, of course, can be amazing with that. So normally, if he turns this technology off, then he can't control his body. It gets worse and worse.
Aqui não é o Michael Fox com os 5 anos de bola. Liga. O que faz? Vou ligar de novo. Acredite se quiser.
So and that's what we hope for, of course, that we apply technologies like these to improve the lives of people. And to be able to move around using their brain, to be able to use a prosthetic arm using their brain, to be able to hear again, to be able to see again. Also has to do with health in the sense of food. So how could AI, for instance, help in analyzing food to target the molecules that are good for you and to make combinations that are fit your body? At the same time, you see that with wealth also comes the need for meat, and people want just meat. And probably you know that 70% of all land is for land. How do you call that? For the production of food is used to feed these that stock, these animals, and it's a very inefficient way of using that land. So we could also use that land to feed people differently, not with beef, but with other sources. So you see that it's quickly changing, and in some areas it's just because people don't have the money yet to afford meat. But as soon as they get the wealth to afford a telephone, they also want to eat meat. And that's just something our planet couldn't cope with if that would be reality. So the impact, the impact methane, especially, that the cows produce is very bad for our planet. And one of our faculty members, Mark Post, created the first in vitro meat burger. So meat that's created in a lab. So it actually takes stem cells from a rund, from a cow, and then grows the meat in a lab. And that would have far less impact on the planet. And it's apparently quite tasty. It was a very expensive burger. I think the first one was $250,000 or so. And they're quickly making sure that it's also on the exponential curve, getting cheaper and cheaper. Other ways of using our planet more effectively is, for instance, using also the height. So horticulture, using vertical layers, vertical farming, and LED lighting to grow crops. So I'm not telling anything new. Probably you've seen this, but seeing the entire array of it might show you that there are so many things happening, and they're so happening at the same time, at an exponential rate, interacting, making emergent possibilities pop up. That I think we should be aware that if a solution is created elsewhere, that it might also impact your society for the better, but it's also good to create that change here. And so the Keynes wrote, I think in the 30s or so, that we wouldn't have to work as much in the future as to keep that level of wealth. But of course, we are living in a period of overconsumption. And so we are still working great hours. Walking here, I understand that the local team here also works great hours, too many hours. And it ties into where I started. So what is a good life? Is a good life fulfilling that task? Or might we find other ways to spend our time more, our precious time more carefully? And it also ties in, for instance, with healthy aging and longevity, those promises that are made that we will live much longer over time. How will we spend our time? What's important? I think time well spent is a crucial question. So in pursuit of the good life, we decided to build a physical space outside Mountain View, also in the Netherlands, to create an innovation hub, a place where people can experience what it's like to be in virtual reality or to use augmented reality. And has anyone been in Clouds over Sidra? Clouds over Sidra is a virtual reality that takes you through a refugee camp. So you really experience what it's like to live in a refugee camp. And you feel your empathy rise, right? You're not talking about building walls in Mexico. You feel that they are equal people with equal needs and equal wishes. that you want to help. So in that innovation hub you can play with Baxter robots, or you can play with virtual reality, or with drones, with CNC machines like laser cutters and 3D printers that make those drones, etc. So we can do two things. I can go onwards on what SingularityU the Netherlands does, or we can I can take questions and try to answer them, or we can answer them together. What do you think?
I think you can tell us about SingularityU the Netherlands. Yeah.
Okay. So for me it has three goals. The first one is to make our organizations aware. So not only the private organizations that need to have a business model that stays active, that are responsible for lots of people in their organizations to pay their rent, for instance, and that must realize that even when a certain business, a certain S-curve is profitable, at one point it will decline, and they should in time and not schoksgewijs, so not in shocks, react to that change. There should be a smoother transition. Having teams work on adjacencies, on new products and solutions at the edges, test, experiment. So in a volatile world with more complexity, it makes sense, right, to have shorter cycles, to test more, to experiment more. So the first thing is private organizations, but also publicly. So there are a lot of policymakers that are not aware of this and that might create more highways or invest in train infrastructure, not being aware of the promises that are made by the on-demand mobility systems, by self-driving cars. What will the self-driving car mean for the insurance business? What will it mean for the real estate value of cities? What will it mean for the paint coatings of cars if they collide less? What will it mean for all the parking revenues that the municipality gathers? So the ripple effects of just one such technology is amazing, and it's just one, and there's so many of them. So public officials, policymakers should also be aware, and active citizenship. We, as in a democracy, each of us has a vote. So when the global socio-economic playing field is changing, then I think we should also be aware of that and be voting for the right cause. And we help with public events the society to be aware, and you can go to our innovation hub to play around. And organizations we help with the awareness, but also applying it, so creating new test beds and pilots and edges and ventures. And then once the tests and the experiments show that it's working, that it fits within a system of one, so as Hegel would say, then we try to scale as quickly as we can. And it's very open, of course. So we take an approach that we believe that often value also resides within sectors. So we have trans-sector, cross-sector programs where we combine different sectors together to make sure that they come up with solutions that require all their capabilities. So a new highway requires connectivity, chips, but also concrete. It requires energy distribution systems, everything that different sectors only combined can realize. Same goes for instance, safety. You could think of a Ministry of Defense, a National Police, and a large municipality working together to increase safety of a certain region. So it's not only the technologies, it's also the application fields like health and mobility. It's also the tools for organizations to be more agile, to cope with that change. And I think also as citizens and as employees, we should be aware of how society is changing, because we need to fit in there as well. We are part of that society, we're part of that economy. And we should look at the right problems, the global challenges, instead of less relevant topics. So it's a wide array of experts, all kinds of fields that show that actually technology is going at a very rapid pace and showing you what building blocks you could use to come up with new solutions. You don't have to be an expert. Like you used to be able to code to create a website, and there are so many tools now out there that allow you to very easily build your own website. It's an example. We also, of course, organize custom programs exclusively for one company. And we organize global impact challenges. The first one we did was to come up with, to improve the living circumstances of refugees. Shelter, security, food, waste, etc. I talked about the Innovation Hub. It was opened during the Dutch Design. Yeah. Yeah.
Every time you organize anything in the Netherlands, are you flying the people from the Silicon Valley, or are you developing as well a local set of experts?
Yeah, we believe that there's sufficient local knowledge, of course. And even in the Netherlands, I mean, the size of the Netherlands is almost a city for the Americans. But also there, scientifically, there are silos. Also, organization-wise, there are all kinds of sectors and silos. So we bring those faculty members together to have cross-pollination, to have conversations and dialogues that there weren't before. And we accredit our own faculty. So not only we use and fly in the American faculty, they are more expensive than involving our own faculty. And we think the local flavor really adds value. And we can also, for instance, take certain topics that are not already there in the US, for instance, more the ethical part or more the certain other topics. I think Europe is especially very well positioned to take a more social and ethical route. So we work as an impact organization. We have a foundation where all our partners are represented, but we also have a limited liability company that is the operational entity. But in the governance structure, it says that we can never pay out dividends. So we can only use those profits to reinvest in society, in the local economy. And our partners help us decide where. And that field, we are quickly expanding not only faculty but also the number of sectors represented in the partner board. You can also go to Mountain View, to the executive program. There are discussions about an accelerator, but I think we would not start an incubator or an accelerator because there's so much happening in the Netherlands already. But we might be able to be a bridge to the US. It's very early stage. Test beds, of course, with the companies we also work on creating test beds on, for instance, smart mobility. Soon you will have all kinds of videos online of our faculty, so you can experience this yourself, perhaps involve them in your own events. And now we have 7 faculty members, to answer your question, but we will probably have 22 in 2017. So in March and May we will expect to accredit 70 more.
Me gustaría hacerte una pregunta sobre el impacto desde que habéis creado el Centro de Innovación en Singularity University ahí en Ámsterdam. ¿Qué impacto sentís que estáis dando hacia la sociedad?
What's the impact on society since you created the Innovation Hub?
Thank you, because my Spanish is very rusty, and non-existent. But so we only started in June, right? And so we first started negotiating with the US to create a framework for the first exponential regional partnerships, and there are currently discussions ranging from Chile to New Zealand, from South Africa to the Nordics. So at one point you will have all kinds of programs like ours with their own faculty, and then we can share. So for instance, we would be able to share, we could involve a great clean energy person from Germany or the Nordics, an educational expert from Finland, for instance. So our impact is a bit early. We started in June, we're half a year away, but our summit was very successful. We made a deal with a media company that spreads out the word even more. So our faculty members are interviewed by them. We organize an event with them for their readers, and it's one of the larger print media platforms, also of course digital, but they used to be very much print focused. they're also transitioning, to make sure that a larger part of society is informed. And actually yesterday evening was our first event with them, and in June we will do a next one. So that's on the active citizenship part. They help us issue specials of 24 pages each quarter. We have chapter events like this, but then in Amsterdam and Rotterdam, Eindhoven, and in the future we will also have them in Nijmegen and Twente and Groningen. So we try to cover regions where people can get together, like here, to just not so much always by a faculty member, but just to talk about amongst that local community, from citizen to citizen, on how society should change for the better. We're talking to large corporations as well.
Which are the main inconvenience trying to put these new paradigms, to try to implement them into reality? So which are the main obstacles that you're having?
Yeah, so that's a very fair point. If someone thinks that he knows everything or she knows everything, it's very hard to convince them that they don't. So if there's an unknown gap in their knowledge, of course, and there's no openness to these new insights, you can believe, like Trump, that there is no climate change. And then trying to convince him with all those slides doesn't help. I can't believe, he probably will be convinced, but he's just not willing to. So it's hard. So there are obstacles, of course, and also the revenue model is an obstacle because, it's quite costly to organize these events. For instance, all these faculty members are experts. They are very wanted. Everyone wants a piece of them and their knowledge. So we've decided, for instance, to create a culture where it's an honor to be involved, and they're not paid too heavily. So it's not a very American model. But at the same time, we have not said that we've not obliged them to show up certain times a year. So they're entirely free. It's only will-based, voluntarily, that they join. And then of course they get compensated, but it's a different kind of framework. But it's costly to organize the events, and sometimes just companies or organizations, public organizations, have very long sales cycles. And we are a small team. So you should realize that we are a small organization with a massive mission. And then of course it can't go fast enough. We want to accelerate very quickly, but sometimes reality is pushing us back.
I have a question, Diederick. Is there you had the Queen opening the Innovation Hub, and I remember that when we had the summit here in April 2015, there were authorities from Eindhoven that came and
I remember.
And met Rob. What's the involvement of the authorities in SingularityU the Netherlands, if any?
So authorities like public authorities?
Municipalities, government, and so on.
The certain public institutes and municipalities were crucial in creating limited but very necessary funding, like seed capital, to get the time and effort and love that it needed to make this happen. Right. So in the beginning, of course, you need people that also need to pay their rent to convince the Americans that this is a very good plan. And it takes time to negotiate and to find a compromise and a model that works. So they were crucial in that regard. And now that we've been incorporated, they are still involved, but not financially.
But do you ever, for example, get commissions from any of the official authorities for you to do a course, to run a course or a program to officers from the administration?
So that's our public facing, not the public like the society, but that's the public institutions that we try to involve, like the Ministry of Defense or Ministry of Health or Ministry of Infrastructure. Of course, we are working on creating programs for them, but as said, I mean the sales cycles are quite long there. People are used to be trained, not so much the public ones, but the private organizations by INSEAD and IMD and the business schools. And the return on learning is sometimes less dramatic than the result of a cost reduction. And so it's less tangible, the return on investment. But we think it's very necessary to do so.
Absolutely. Among other things, because by the time the ideas are implemented, things will have evolved. So one needs to think of that curve and start planning ahead in order to really hit the point.
Yeah, you need to have a certain knowledge base that's that you're immersed in that you really live that new thinking. And that takes time, and at the same time the organization itself will change. So instead of outside in, it will be more inside out, that you're intrinsically motivated, that you're so passionate that you will strive for it even when it doesn't make sense, that you're not alienated from your work, that you're not alienated from your colleagues, but that you're thinking of that massive transformative purpose, that you're thinking of that higher goal that you want to reach. And even when it doesn't work for you, you are still working towards that goal. And I think organizations see that with millennials and others, that's changing. They see that just the more the managerial hierarchy approach with somebody telling you what to do is also alienating and killing the passion, is not allowing people to be empowered and to create the change themselves.
And I have a last question, but on my side, but I don't know whether someone else would like to ask any before we close.
Yo quería, sí, Antonio quiere hacer una pregunta.
Yeah, probably one of the biggest issues we're going to have for the upcoming things happening is the lack of professionals, the new generation professionals. Are you doing also anything regarding education of the kids or younger ages, or are you concentrating basically in the enterprise?
No, it's our wish, of course, to involve as many as we can. So, where our summit is quite expensive. It is 2,000 euros, and the average price with early birds and everything is 1,500, I think. But the event we organized yesterday is only, on average, let's say 300 euros. So it will not reach the children, but it will at least, it's at a price point that it reaches more people. So we've taken, let's say, the Tesla approach, where you have the Model 3 instead of the S. And we have free events. So all the meetups, all the chapter events are for free. And the Innovation Hub is open for free. And we will start with programs that combine different ages. For instance, bridging a gap with grandmothers and grandfathers and young children, at least of the age of 15 or so, that can grasp this thinking, but are very young deciding where to go. I'm not sure what your term professional means, because that's a very, we would dive into semantics if you would really analyze your question.
Una última pregunta tenemos por ahí, sí.
We are the main ethics problem. We are the main ethics problem, are you finding?
So the most urgent ethical problems that I see. So to rephrase, I am not an expert in all of this. So we should really get you into one of the programs with faculty members that are knowledgeable. But I studied, at least I did a pre-master in philosophy, bioethics and health. So I think bioethics is a very important one, human enhancement, because as I began my story on inequality. So there's now financial inequality, but what if there would be a different kind of inequality that is more biological? That you get access to improving your health, or that certain parts of society get they have the resources to enhance themselves or their children, and other parts not. And it might even be that certain regions like Asia would allow for that, and other regions like Europe would not. And of course, in the beginning, it would be to avoid diseases like cancer or that you inherit from previous generations. But at one point, it might also be a very small step to choose for a child that is from a certain sex, or is smarter, or is taller, or whatever.
And my last question before closing, as I was going to say, is who is bearing or sponsoring all of those free events and programs and innovation hub activities that you have?
So the government, the local government in the region Eindhoven supported us in creating that innovation hub.
And the activities?
And the activities and all free activities are from our margin.
All right.
So if any.
Good. Well, we have a glass of Spanish wine now, so I'd like to close thanking enormously Diederick for having come all the way from the Netherlands and having shared his expertise and his vision with us. This is not the last activity that the chapter will organize this year, before the end of the year. We will have 2 more exponential campuses for teenagers, one at the beginning of December and another one during the Christmas holidays. And they will be announced on the website and by our newsletter, and I would like to invite you to attend any of the final presentations, because they are really impressive and the children do really good things. And then there's the joint initiative with San Francisco Raula. We are doing a kind of adapted GSP for students, for high school students, and we will have a presentation on December the 15th on the first set of ideas that they've developed. So we're not saying goodbye yet in this 2016 that have been so full of activities. We're saying see you very soon in our next activity, and please join me in giving a warm round of applause to Diederick. Thank you very much.